We can lay out 100 natural light photographers in front of us in pictures, and we can lay 100 artificial light photographers out. And it's going to be very difficult sometimes to pick out your work because, let's just face it, there's a lot of good photographers. And the thing that's going to separate you is your infrastructure and how quickly you can get through a session, making that an incredible experience for the client and get that back to the client and move on.
Welcome to Tried and True with a Dash of Woo, where we're all about mixing tried and true strategies that actually work with the magic of manifestation and the science of programming your unconscious mind so that you walk away feeling integrated, inspired, and aligned. I'm Renee Bowen, certified life and business coach, professional photographer, middle-aged wife, and mom to now 3 grown kids. I've built 2 multiple 6-figure businesses with 0 business training by digging in, learning the methods, and now I'm here to pass them all on to you. From photography and business strategies to energy healing, human design, and the basics of manifestation, we cover it all here. I'm here to help you embrace your multi-passionate brains and lean into the fastest and most efficient ways to reach your goals, whatever they may be. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, or maybe you're just here for the woo-woo, let's dive in and explore all the exciting ways to take your life, business, and self-improvement to the next level. Thanks for joining me, and get ready to be inspired. Hello, friends. Thanks for joining us again on Tried and True with a Dash of Woo. I have a really awesome guest today. His name is Ty Fisher. A lot of you guys might know Ty. He's had a very extensive professional photography career. It spans more than 15 years. It all started with fishing, photography, an initially modest part-time portrait venture that flourished into the establishment of 2 full-fledged portrait studios. In addition to this remarkable achievement, Ty's entrepreneurial spirit led him to co-found and co-own Rebook Who, a prestigious global post-production company that I use quite a bit, I have to say, and Fafa, a notable entity within the industry. Moreover, he played a pivotal role as a co-founder of Next Gen Photography Solutions, further solidifying his status as an innovator. So Ty's influence extends beyond just his entrepreneurial endeavors that we just talked about. He's also assumed the mantle of educator, imparting his expertise to thousands of photographers across the United States. His teachings specifically focus on optimizing efficiency and driving profitability within the realms of portrait and volume sports photography. So we are going to dive into all of this stuff today. It's a really cool, in-depth conversation with Ty that I know you're going to get a lot out of. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Hey, Ty, thanks for being here today. Really excited to talk to you.
Renee, thank you so much for having me on today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So we've kind of like seen each other around for the year. You've been around for a long time. You've owned a couple of really, successful portrait studios. You've also done a lot of other things that we'll start talking about as well. You're an entrepreneur at heart. So I love that. And we'll talk about those endeavors, but I want to kind of dive right into a really, I think, hot topic that I hear from photographers a lot, about workflow, right? So, and you're going to hear a lot of different things from a lot of different people, but I am also, and I know you're big on this, I'm also big on efficiency. So talk to me a little bit about why you think workflow is so important, first of all, and then we'll kind of like get into the nuts and bolts of how you like to explain that for photographers.
Well, I think the biggest thing is profit. I think if you want to be a successful studio that makes money, you've got to be efficient, whether that's in the portrait end or if that's in the volume end. And you need to build an infrastructure, to me, almost before you build the business. And that efficiency and that workflow is, to me, that key piece that needs to be integrated right from the beginning. Even when you don't have clients, you need to be operating like you're a full-time big studio.
Right. So what does that look like for you? Like when photographers come to you and ask you these specific questions, like what do you suggest for them?
The first few things I like to talk about is, first of all, your scheduling with your clients, making sure that you're doing some kind of payment plan right up front to even get them on your calendar. The way you photograph your clients, not overshooting, setting up your packages that are clear to the client on what they expect to spend the amount of time with you, maybe the amount of outfit changes, maybe the number of images, all of that in a very clear description, as well as how are you handling your post-production? How are you handling your editing? Is that something you're taking on yourself, or is that something you're looking to outsource? If you're looking to outsource it, which is actually going to make you more money, are you pricing your products and your services accordingly to offset those costs? So to me, those are really three of the big structures that every portrait studio should look at. I call those more the logical side of the business, as opposed to like the in-person sales, where I call that more of the emotional side of the business. And you have to connect all three of those. But in order to be successful, you've got to be able to move from point A to the final point in a very efficient manner so you can keep bringing people through the door.
That's a really good point, because I feel like, and I see this a lot, I actually just made a TikTok about this because I see in my groups a lot of photographers who will come in and sort of talk about this nightmare client or, some kind of situation that came up. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they didn't manage any expectations, right? And you see this a lot too. Those of us who've been around for a while, we know, we're like, okay, but what did you do on the front end of that? And I know a lot of photographers don't love to hear that, but you kind of need to hear that, because yes, we're always going to get clients sometimes who are problematic no matter what we do. Sometimes we can't help that, right? But that should be the rarity, right? We want to make sure that we are doing our jobs on the front end as efficiently as possible to prepare that client for what's coming. It's not their job to guess. It's our job to let them know what's coming, to be clear about it, to manage those expectations, to communicate really well so that they can have a really awesome experience, and so can we. So I like that we are including that in the workflow, and we're not just talking about, how you import your images and how you archive those images. Those things are important as well, but that's not what we're going to just focus on today. I want, it's the whole picture, right?
Exactly. So with our studios, we had really a few steps. We had a 4-step system, meaning we were going to see that client 4 times. We were going to do a pre-consult with them. That pre-consult is going to show them exactly what our packages were, how many, whether it's an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, how many outfit changes, do you want makeup, do you not want makeup, how many images are going to be within that package that you're going to see. And if you want to get on our calendar, you're going to put what we call the first payment of our 3 easy payment plan down right there. That right there sets the expectation. They walk out knowing exactly where their session is going to start, how long it's going to be, how many images they're probably going to have available for that, a list of our products, and they're on our calendar and they know where to meet. And everybody's on the front. And that's one of the biggest struggles I see with photographers starting into studios is generally you start as a part-time photographer moving into a full-time situation. And with that, you tend to be on location a lot, so you end up just meeting your client at the location. And you could spend an hour just figuring out what you're going to do before the session even starts. Time is money. You don't have an hour, a half hour to discuss that. That all needs to be discussed up front, and you've got to get paid. You've got to get a secure payment, because if they call to reschedule, hey, that's fine. I'll reschedule on my time, but I still have your deposit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, a lot of us, and, myself included, and I think that's part of your story too, is, kind of diving into it part-time, like you said, and, a lot of photographers use this as a side gig to start with, and quickly realize that, okay, I got to figure out how to run this business, which, a lot of us creatives aren't naturally super good at automatically. And so we have to learn. And yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. So that's why I like having different photographers on, so you guys out there can hear all these different ways, because it really, there is no one size fits all. I definitely want to preface all of this with the saying that your business can look very unique, and you should stand out. You should be doing things that feel good for you, because if you try and just adopt what someone else blanket, teaches, it may or may not work. And so you really have to look at all these options, and think about how you want to approach it. I see that a lot with my coaching, because usually by the time people come to me, people have been through several programs sometimes, and they're so confused. And so I just want to let everybody out there know, this is supposed to be helpful for you so that you can see how successful photographers have been able to maintain that success and build their businesses. And so hopefully this will be a little bit insightful with respect to what you can do as well. And some of the things that, Ty has done works really, really well too. Something that I heard you say earlier that I definitely want to poke out a little bit is not to overshoot. I am a very proud overshooter. So I definitely want to just mention that real quick, because I know that a lot of my audience does that too. Here's the difference though. What he's talking about, and you can clarify for this in a minute too. I think that what he means is, if you don't be an overshooter, so time is money, right? If you're spending hours and hours, I have photographers come to me, and I'm sure you do too, who are spending like 8 or 9 hours or longer on one session. That is not good. That is a time killer, a money killer. That's really what we're kind of trying to get at. If you're going to be an overshooter, you either have to learn how to outsource, or you need to learn how to cull really freaking fast, which I do, and get through it, right? Like, so the culling tends to be such a time suck and a bottleneck for so many people. So I just wanted to preface it like that, because you can definitely be an overshooter, but that means that going into it, you're going to have to be really good and efficient on the culling, right? You can't just go into it willy-nilly. Does that make sense?
Well, that's true, but it's actually more two-part for me. Okay. And this stems back to my early days, just diving into full-time photography. My assistant, because I shot off-camera flash, that was part of my style, looked at me one day and said, "Hey, you're shooting a lot." I said, "Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I get all the angles." And they said, "Have you stopped to consider their time? Have you considered that they scheduled maybe a 2-hour session, and maybe you're going over, and you're invading into their personal time now?
Right.
They may not have time for this. You've got to find a way to balance that." And that right there was a light bulb moment for me. Okay. Because I really, let's say as creatives, at least for me, I wasn't concerned about their time. I was concerned about the lighting and the beauty of the shot. And oh my God, we've got to do this, this, and this. And it made me take a pause and stop and say, you know what? I do need to provide expectations up front of what to expect as far as images. And I was very stringent. And the reason I was is because it was a different pose for every image. And I showed them the back of the camera during the session because I wanted them to like those images before the IPS. Because if I've got it right in camera, it's only going to be better when we get to the emotional side of it with the in-person sales.
See, and that's so different, right? And I love these conversations because we all do things so differently. And because I don't use OCF by choice, and I use a lot of movement,
right.
And I don't show my clients the back of the camera. We move quick. And so that's why I shoot so many images, because I'm looking for life and energy. This is all you've got to find your your stride,
your groove, right? Your style. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a good point about time, because a lot of photographers do not go into it thinking about their time or their client's time. So I definitely want to highlight that. My sessions are time-based, and that's one of the reasons, is because I want them to know what that expectation is, and vice versa.
Yes.
And because I'm shooting in LA too, if they have a 2-hour session, we can't get from downtown LA to Malibu in a 2-hour session, because the drive time is included in that.
No.
And that's something I want photographers to really hear, as well as part of your process, your workflow, and your expectations. You really need to start thinking about that.
Absolutely. We actually had radius of miles in our sessions. Yep. How far we were willing to actually travel and how many locations you had within those sessions. And what I tell, or at least what I used to teach with every client, was make sure you have four sessions. A introductory session and an anchor session, and allow that anchor session to be something that's very expensive. Mm-hmm. Something you really don't even want to photograph, but if they're going to pay it, it's worth your time. Because what that does is it really makes that middle session that you're looking to sell to be the sweet spot.
Yep.
That's the one that they're going to be drawn to. So I knew what session I wanted to photograph. For me, it was a 2-hour session. It was a $7.99 minimum at that time. But I had a $4,000 session and I had a $4.99 session, and $7.99 was my sweet spot. So I knew what I was looking to get. I never like to shoot past 2 hours. It's just too much when you're busy. I think if you're trying to take on 4, 5, 6, 7 on location sessions, a day. I mean, there was up towards we're shooting 25 to 30 sessions a week, and I'm only shooting 3 to 4 days a week. So I'm cramming a lot of hours into those times. So it had to be very orchestrated, even though I wasn't trying to ever take away the creative impression and the new client experience that they were feeling. I wanted that still to be very exciting. But in the back of my head, still everything was running on a clock.
Yeah. No, really good point. And I'm very similar in the way that I structure sessions. It's one of the things that I teach as well. And it's a strategy, right? And we won't get too much in the nuts and bolts of, all of that, because I want to kind of stick to this workflow. But that is definitely a good takeaway for the photographers who are listening, for sure. So let's kind of switch gears just a little bit, not too much. We're going to still, be on this topic of this workflow, but I'm not, and I never have been, a high volume or sports photography, but I know that a lot of people who follow me are.
Yes.
And I know that you have some experience in that. Yes. And so what do you think, as well as portrait? So what's the main difference for you between your workflow and your processes for a portrait, as opposed to sports or high volume?
So once a year, I still teach volume sports and school photography. The first thing I tell our attendees is, this is business. This is not creative. Now, it can seem creative, but it cannot be near as creative or ethereal or abstract as a portrait studio. Because in a portrait studio, if you're doing it, with intention, you're not shooting thousands of images. That should not be the idea. Volume school and sports, you can shoot thousands of images in a given day. And if you're not on schedule, you've got a lot of upset coaches, upset parents, upset kids. So your job on time management just multiplied tenfold. So you really have to get your infrastructure right in the portrait end before you switch to a volume-based school and sports, because it is two different monsters, and it is strictly business. It is, to me, not the creative aspect. Now, don't get me wrong. I appreciate the portraits that they're doing and the atmosphere sprays and the gels. I think it's beautiful. But when you're doing team and individual or school portraits, that's out the window. You're just trying to make sure you're getting great pictures in an efficient amount of time, and you're moving kids through the line as quickly as possible. Because it could be during practice time. I know with hockey, it could be during ice time, which is incredibly expensive. So you have a lot of variables in the school and sports that are out of your control, but predicate how your day needs to go.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something that a lot of people probably don't think too much about. And it is very possible to do both. I see a lot of photographers, be able to do that. But I like how you sort of lead into, starting, getting your process down first and then maybe diving into something like that. And although I haven't done sports in schools, I have done really big corporation headshots in a day, which is kind of similar. And
it's very similar.
Yeah. You got to be fast. You got to be really quick. You got to be really good at what you do. There can't be any questioning, like, did I get this shot? No, you have to know what you're doing. So if you're new at this, hone that skill first. You've got to get really good at what you do and get really fast at it. And if I always had someone helping, like, it's not really advisable to be doing that solo right out of the gate. If possible, you can get to that point, but yeah, it's a whole different beast, I can imagine. And I think that the people that we see doing, like you said, the portraits and all of these like really cool things that they're doing, I think that, most of that can be done really well in conjunction with your high-end boutique photography business, like that, like other side of it, and not necessarily like this volume.
Absolutely. Yeah. It could be more of a scheduled in-studio session or on-location session. It should be more in conjunction with that. And, you bring up a great point that you were saying about you had someone with you. I always recommend, because it's overwhelming your first large volume gig, make sure you overstaff. Make sure you have few more people, volunteers than you actually need, because you're going to find out you need them. Whether it's just wrangling the kids or keeping parents back or taking the money or checking this, checking that, you're going to need people. And really how I started with that, and I recommend this for all photographers that are looking to make that transition, put a feeler out to local schools or rec teams or travel teams and say, hey, I want to photograph your team for free for marketing. First, it's going to be a great learning lesson for you on how to start moving through volume. And second, it's going to build your portfolio, because if you don't have a portfolio, it can be very hard to attract schools, sports, rec leagues, AAUs, travels that are used to this and know how this should look. And they've already got managed expectations that you're going to have to perform at.
That's a really good point, because I feel like also it can be a great lead in to a portrait business as well. If you want to do both, or at least it could feed some of those clients directly into your portrait business as well, because you're literally inserting yourself into that world. And so many senior photographers don't have an in. Maybe they don't have kids at school, or they don't have, contacts with teachers or coaches or things like that. And so we always have to be thinking about, okay, well, where are your target clients and how can you get in front of them? So doing that kind of thing could be a really great way to do that. And I always suggest to photographers as well, even if they don't want to do like high volume in sports, okay, maybe the cheer team, the dance team, things like that. That's a little bit smaller scale, still like a lot of people, but not quite as big as an entire team or various teams at the school per se, right? So you could kind of like test the waters with that. But that's a really great way to get your brand in front of those clients.
Absolutely. And I think if you focus on certain sports, remember Lori Nordstrom? Mm-hmm. She was a great baby family photographer. But I remember her talking to me one day and she said, pick a lane and kill it.
Yeah.
And so I found seniors, and I didn't want to photograph families. I just picked that lane and I killed it, because that's all I had to focus on. And in sports, I only really wanted to photograph volleyball, softball, baseball, and basketball. The teams of 12 to 15 kids, small teams, but we could find large leagues. And that was my lane. I didn't want football. I didn't want band. I didn't want a lot of those large sports, because it didn't feel right for me. So you don't have to shoot every sport. Find what works for you and stay with that lane.
All right, friends, you guys have heard me talking a lot about Elevate over the last few weeks, but here's your last shot, because tonight at midnight, the top 2 levels, Evolution and All Access, close. These are 6-month commitments, so you won't be able to purchase these after midnight tonight. The foundation level, which is only $49, is still going to remain open. But I want to talk to you right now about these top 2 levels, because I don't think you guys realize how much is included in these. So there's only 2 spots left for the All Access level, which is the top level. And the reason I cap it at 12 is because it includes the cost of an in-person workshop, which is ridiculous. Like, for the cost that you'd be paying for the entire experience of the 6 months of All Access, you would pay for just a standalone workshop. But when you get it in All Access, You get all the other stuff included in All Access, which is a lot, you guys. You get 2 one-on-one coaching calls with me over the course of the 6 months. You get group coaching calls, you get Voxer support, and you get other courses of mine included, like a lot. So it's kind of a no-brainer. If you've been hoping to get into coaching with me at the level up level, and you can't invest in that level yet, this is your best option, and it's going away at midnight. The evolution level is also just as meaty. It doesn't include the in-person workshop, but it's really juicy. A lot is included. I'm going to put the link again in the show notes, but you got to jump on this before midnight, because after this, it's gone, and I don't know if I'm opening it again. All right, I hope to see you inside. So this brings up a really interesting conversation side topic, because I see this a lot. I agree. And that's one of the reasons, when I started, I kind of fell into photography like a lot of people do. And, my kids were younger, so people wanted me to start, photographing their kids and such. And I did a little bit like most people do in the beginning, a little bit of everything. Headshots was like the first thing I shot because my husband's an actor. So it was just one of those like things I fell into. And now to this day, I still love it. And I could shoot headshots in my sleep because I've done them for so long. But I learned very quickly that niche, right? So niching down.
Right.
And you're going to find in our industry some people who say, no, you don't have to. This is how you can make $600,000 and plus a year, shooting all these different things. And then there's going to be some photographers who are like, find your lane, find your niche, and get really good at it. So it's a very interesting topic because I've always been on that side of pick your lane, because what you focus on is what grows. Mm-hmm. And I think, and maybe this is not 100% true across the board, but I don't think that every single photographer out there, first of all, wants to do all that. Second of all, is good at it, because it means you're going to have to staff. You can't physically do that by yourself. You just can't. And a lot of photographers don't know how to hire associates, don't want to. Right. If you have that like goal and you want to do it, okay, it probably means you're good at it. But for the most of us, I would argue that we're not. And it's not something we want to do, right? And so when you do niche down.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And you find like for me, it was seniors. Like in 2007, that's when I decided like, okay, seniors is going to be my thing. That's what I want to be known for. I want to be known in my area as that senior photographer, because no one was shooting the way that I wanted to do it,
right.
Which was a fantastic opportunity. I thought, because, it was still very fresh in this area. And even though the market seems saturated, there's still so much value in finding your lane and getting really honing that, getting really, really good at it. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of photographers today feel like they have to do all the things in order to make money, but that is not true.
That's the thing. There's just no manual when you get into a creative self-employed industry. You're just you're diving in and you're just you're finding yourself and you're finding what you like and what you don't like. And you're right. We like to say we're good at multitasking, but for the most part, we're really not good at multitasking. We're really good when we have one concept in front of us and we can expand upon that. And it's the same for me in photography. If you find, I was not a good baby newborn photographer. I was not a good family photographer. Therefore, I didn't advertise it, and I did maybe 5 sessions a year total in that genre. Seniors was it. But it allowed me to always be inspired, always pushing myself, always finding new ideas. I had one simple task to focus on. And for me, simplicity is key. It's peace in life. And you can still make a lot of money in a niche market like that, because you're going to find your work, it just exponentially gets better and better faster than a lot of photographers that are trying to cover a lot of different genres.
I have to agree. I really do. So what would you say to a photographer who, because I'm always looking for good takeaways for photographers who are listening in particular, to as far as workflow goes and some of the things that we've just been talking about, what maybe are are one or two mistakes that you either have made or see people make that you would like people to avoid or help them be able to see ahead of time?
Right. Well, those with the entrepreneurial spirit, the first question I generally like to ask them is your plans to be self-employed or self-enslaved?
I love that.
Do you want to run the job or do you want the job to run you? If they want the job to run them, then I know the answers to that as well. But if they want to run the job, they want to be self-employed, they want to have as much time of their own personal life as they can and still make money, that's where we get involved in the workflow. And we start talking about, hey, I don't care who you outsource your work to, but outsource your work. You should not be touching your images, because here's the reality of this. Every hour spent behind a computer averages out to about $200 to $250 per hour that you are missing out on. That's average. Can be higher in some areas, a little lower in others. But think about that. I know photographers that start their editing at 6 p.m. They finish up at 2 a.m. They've just wasted $1,500 or more just simply by sitting behind their computer and editing. And they feel that that is their signature. And that is not your signature. Your brand is your signature. Everything that encompasses that image, from your studio, your marketing, the way you treat customers, that is your signature. We can lay out 100 natural light photographers in front of us in pictures, and we can lay 100 artificial light photographers out. And it's going to be very difficult sometimes to pick out your work because, let's just face it, there's a lot of good photographers. And the thing that's going to separate you is your infrastructure and how quickly you can get through a session, making that an incredible experience for the client, and get that back to the client and move on. And the more you can do that rinse and repeat cycle, the faster you're going to build your business. And it's very easy to go to an outsourced company, find out what they're going to charge you, offset that cost to your client, because it shouldn't cost you anything. And the other thing for photographers is that is a cost of service. That is deducted from your profits at the end of the year for tax deduction. So it is a win-win situation, but people still say it's too expensive. And I can argue that all day with you that it's simply not.
100% agree with that. I tell this to photographers all the time. Early on, I was that photographer who was like, no, I can't possibly give this away. That my final edit is I'm
a control freak.
Oh, 100% me. Yes. And how could I possibly teach someone? First of all, it's such a narcissistic thought. Like, when you really think about it, right? Like, I'm not calling all of us narcissists in a true sense of the word, but it is. It's kind of like, how could I possibly pass this on? Okay, first of all, calm down. You can, right? It feels like it's impossible. It does. And I personally, my style is very there is something about my style that is, mine. It took me a long time to get there. And I see a lot of photographers. Yes, I can tell that they have a style, but if you did it, you can duplicate it. You can teach someone. You can absolutely work with either a company or a person to make that happen if it is a priority to you. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to make excuses. And like you said, it's going to cost you so much time and money in the long run and keep you from not just booking more clients, but also keep you from spending time with your kids, which is why you probably started this business in the first place, was to spend more time with your kids.
Right. Yeah. Everybody thinks they're getting into the photography world to spend more time with their family, and they find out they're spending way less time than they ever imagined. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And you said it, enslaved to your business, and that is really what this is about, is that, if you're enslaved to this computer and you're spending hours editing like that, there is a problem in your business. I don't care how much money you're making or how successful you are. I have had photographers come to me who've been in business, I'm not kidding, at least 15 years or more, who were, by all accounts, making over $200,000 a year, had successful businesses, but they literally were about to lose it because all they did was work, work, work. And it was because of this. This is such a problem in our industry. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I think that if you're listening to this,
First of all, don't feel discouraged if that's you, because you're not alone. Like, this is a very...
No, it's all of us. It's all of us.
Yeah, it's a very common issue.
Yeah, you're right. I would say to a lot of the people listening, look, this isn't something you've got to dive all the way into either. You know, you talk about your signature style and look, and I completely respect that, but let's be real. Blemish removal and stray hair removal and whitening of teeth and eyes and softening of skin is not a signature style. It's the grunt work that you do at the beginning to prepare the image. So what I tell a lot of customers that work with our company, Rebook Who, is, hey, start out with just the basics. Just get that off your plate, because that basic work is taking way more time. And then get it back and put your signature spin on it. It'll cut the time in half.
Exactly.
You'll be pleased with the fact you've gotten that out of your plate, which is no longer creative or inspiring to you. And it'll make you enjoy what little editing you were doing. And then once you get to a point where that is becoming too much, then look at a personalized workflow where your signature style can be replicated back into those images from the beginning to the end. It's not something you have to dive in all the way. You've got to dip your toes in the water, get used to it, and move with. But let's go back to film for a second. Okay, I don't know how many of the listeners ever photograph film, but I'm going to tell you this right now. Not a photographer touched their film. They sent it to the lab for retouching and processing. They hung out for a week at home waiting for their film to come back. That's how it all started. For some reason, when the digital age started, everybody became an editor. And that's not really how the infrastructure of the business was actually built.
Yeah.
It's like it took a hard left. And then people are like, well, I'm saving time because I've got software. But no, you're losing money because you're not taking on more clients.
Yeah.
Or you're losing time. It's one or the other.
Yeah. No, it's true. I was a film shooter, and I remember waiting for that film to get back. And there's a lot of people who still shoot film who'll tell you, yeah, I do have to do very little to it when it gets back to me with my scans or whatever, because they can, deliver them digitally now. But right. I think what happened too is that, in film days, we would send it off, it would come back, and it would be done because it would be prints. There wasn't anything digital for us to manipulate.
Right.
But then when we went to digital, we were shooting these raw images and they came back and they looked like crap.
Right.
So you had to do something to them because a raw image is a negative. And so I think that's where it started. And then, yes, I think that I love people's individual styles. I'm a fan of people like finding their style and having their nuances on these images. And I think that is part of what, speaks to our clients as part of our branding. However, like you said, don't think that you have to just recreate the entire, start the whole process and dive all the way to the deep end in the beginning, because even me, I will definitely outsource major retouching, all that. And I won't even touch a hair removal, anything like that. But what I loved was sending a pre-edit out. Like, I'm just going to send you send my pre-edit, get a good base of where I want it to be. And then, like you said, it comes back to me. It takes me about maybe 10 minutes, put my little magic touch on it because I have a process and it works, and I'm done.
Yes. And
that is it was life-changing when I figured out that I could do that, because I think I went into it in the beginning thinking that I had to give it all away and that someone had to literally be me. But that's not the case. Like, you can just do the pre-edit. You could do a base. You could do like what you were talking about.
Right.
So it's really cool what we can do. And I segues a little bit into Rebook Who because I've used you guys before, and I want to kind of just, mention that for people. I'll put it in the show notes too, but Ty's a co-owner of Rebook Who, and you founded the company too. So you've been there for, I don't even know how long you guys have been in business, but a while, right?
Oh, we're going on our 13th year.
Yeah. So they're a great resource just in general for so many different things. And I want to, dive into that a little bit. So what would that look like for someone who wanted to onboard? What would they even do? How would they start that process with you guys?
So with us, we've really focused on the customer end and the customer service end these last couple of years, especially. And, we have direct phone line. We have live chat 12 hours a day. We have email to customer support. You can call the phone number, hit option 2 and you can get me or leave me a message and we'll chat about it to get you on board. But really, the onboarding for a professional photographer is really simple. It's going to the rebookwho.com, hitting the pro login, filling out your information, putting a credit card on file, and start your order. Now, through the website, you can go through our services. On each service page, there is a button that allows you to see a screen share video of actually how to order that service. So everything is there in place to onboard you same day, get you going. And any questions you've got a live chat bubble there for the 12 hours of the day to say, hey, am I doing this right? And it's not an Autobot. We've got 5 people in customer service that are going to talk to you and say, yeah, you're doing fine, or hey, we need this and this for this. So it's I want to say for many it can be intimidating at first, and we're trying to take that intimidation out through customer service and really just making sure you feel comfortable with what you're trying to order. And it is, you can start with the basic services. We do a bundled service for retouching, or we do even an a la carte where maybe you just need blemish removal. Maybe you just need stray hair removal. Well, you can just pay for that. It's like anywhere from 30 to 60 cents an image. Or you can use a full bundled service. We also provide free online proofing that helps you mitigate any issues with production. So we can start to really kind of understand you. And one thing, and I don't care what company you use, but one thing I want to stress was when you start outsourcing, do not get frustrated in the beginning. It's going to take time and communication for a production team to understand you and you to understand them. Now, if you're working with a company that refuses to work with you in that sense, then I would look elsewhere. But do know it's like a marriage. It requires communication, and it needs to come from both sides so that you can start to really hone in on what your desired effect is that you're looking for. And for a company like us, so that we can provide for you. And we start with those bundled services, and then we move a lot of those customers into their own personalized workflow where they're working with a small batch of editors. They have a sets service. We have their actions, their presets. We're providing them layered PSD files if they want to do their own adjustments on the back end. So it's really an easy opportunity to get a lot of work off your plate. And what I'll tell people is be careful, because it becomes addictive. Because when you're used to still being at the office or in your office or at your kitchen table till 9, 10 o'clock at night, and you start shutting down at 4, 5, 6 o'clock, and you start having that additional time, it really starts to open up your perspective and say, wow, now I've got this time to either A, go to my kids' games, have a date night with my family, my husband, my wife, bring on more clients. It gives you opportunity to actually be self-employed. And I think we have a problem as creatives accepting that we can work less hours and make more money. We always think we need to work more and more and more to make more and more and more. And it's really not, at least in my perspective, that's not the goal. My goal is to be as lazy as I can possibly be and make as much money as I can be and spend as much time with my family as I want. And that's the God's honest truth.
I love that. And I preach that day in and day out. I 100% agree. We have kind of been sold this lie, I think, too, of, if we're not doing all the time, we can feel like we're not getting ahead. We're not making the money, but there's a lot of power in sitting back and just being in flow as well and not pushing so hard all the time, because we do need the balance. And that, kind of leads me into my next question, because this show is all about the strategy and the flow, right? The strategy and the woo and whatever you want to call it. It's about balance. It's about achieving balance in your life, because our businesses shouldn't run us, even though we're entrepreneurs. I don't care if you run several businesses. The whole idea of this is that you went into this so that you could have more time. And chances are you're a slave to the business at this point. There's that meme that goes around all the time that says, oh, I got into business, so that I could spend more time with my family. And literally they're just at the computer all the time or whatever. They work 24/7. That's not what I want for you. I know that's not what you want for photographers either. So I love, first of all, you guys, if, I hope that he kind of demystified the giving away your editing or some of your outsourcing, because I feel like a lot of you get really, really nervous and stressed about the whole idea. So hopefully that took some of that away and you guys actually take the step to reach out and see how you can make that easier for yourself. And I'll make sure I link those things for people in the show notes. But I wanted to ask you, Ty, before we wrap up, it's something that I ask everybody on this show, is how do you incorporate the woo, the flow, the magic, whatever you want to call it, in your life? I know that you said that, that is very important to you, the time, the peace in your life. How do you incorporate that and how does that show up for you?
I'm honest with myself. When I'm no longer maybe happy or excited about what I'm doing, I need to find what I need to be doing. I have to be honest about that. I spent 10 years in 2 portrait studios and a volume photography business. And I was doing well. I had a great workflow. But there was just something itching at me that it wasn't my end goal. I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more in the industry, and I had to be honest with myself. And I shut down both my studios while we were still growing and getting very profitable. People are like, where are you going? I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else in the industry. I had to be honest about it. I think that's very, very difficult for people to do. I think there's always that person in the back of your mind saying, is this really where you want to be right now? Is this really the thing that you're passionate about or whatever it may be? And I just got to tell you, risk is hard. I get it, but you've done it once. Keep taking those small risks, whether you're passionate about photography, and make that business run like a clock. Do not let it run you. Or if photography is really not your gig, but you love the industry, find something in the industry that you are passionate about and go for it. Because you're doing a disservice to yourself. Because the one thing that is most valuable here, over all of money, is time.
And you can't get it back. You can't get it back. And I love that. That's a really good takeaway for sure. And you have to find what lights you up. And a lot of people don't. You're right. A lot of people just sort of, keep doing it because they feel like they have to. And so kudos to you for listening to that voice and to listening to yourself, being honest with yourself and honoring that, because it does take a lot of courage to do that. It can be really scary. But I'm a huge believer that if you listen and you're honest with yourself and you look at something instead of running from it, it's only going to lead you to the better place. It's only going to lead you for what's best for your highest self, because you're paying attention. You're being intentional. So this was awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. This was a really cool conversation.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Renee. I've had a lot of fun today, and I hope I've been able to provide just some small nuggets of information that maybe someone out that's listening can take away from. And please know, I have literally in my business, I think I've become more of a therapist to photographers than a vendor because I spend so much time with our photographers, talking to them about this and getting them through the tough times and what they're facing and what they're dealing with, and how can we help restructure this to make life better for you?
Yeah. I know. I love doing that too. I never would have thought that I did back in my early days, but man, I'm glad I listened to that voice too that told me that.
It's funny like that. I didn't think so either. So I agree with you. So
tell people where to find you online. I'll link everything too, but where do you like to connect with people best?
I connect best through email, ty@rebookwho.com. Phone number is 937-462-1057. Option 2 is me. Our website's rebookwho.com. I am on Facebook, but that's pretty much just personal for me. I kind of keep that locked down. I don't like to jive and do business through social media platforms. So
sounds good. Well, You guys reach out to Ty, and thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you so much for having me on today. It's a pleasure.
Awesome episode, right? Like, we covered a lot of stuff, and I really love this discussion with Ty. So I want to hear what you have to say about it. Let me know your feedback. Screenshot your podcast app wherever you listen to it, and then post it on Instagram on your story and tag me at Renee Bowen. Let me know your thoughts, share it with your friends. Obviously, if you haven't written a review yet, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Those help us out a ton. The podcast is going great. I've been loving doing this for you guys. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback. So keep it coming. I really want to know what you think about it. If you have any ideas for shows, if you've got any suggestions, I'm super open. Shoot me a DM over on Instagram and let me know. And final reminder, Elevate closes tonight, guys. This is your last chance for the top 2 levels. Will I see you inside?